same way the sun says what we must have in order to distinguish ourselves, and the moon says what we need on a deep inner level, the rising sign says how we go about getting both of those things. It's how we project ourselves in the world and what we pay attention to in our environment. Regardless of where the sun is, an air sign on the ascendant is going to approach the world with the mind, thinking rationally. That's the idea, at least. We'll start with the first air sign of the zodiac, Gemini. When this is rising, the native loves interfacing with the world. You might say, well, sure, everyone likes to have exchanges and interactions with the things and people around them. But in fact, many people don't like that. And when something transpires, they reach inwards first and ask themselves what they already know that could help them, or what inner resources would be useful. They process on the emotional, subjective, personal plane. But Gemini looks to what other people know and what resources surround them. They go through life with outstretched hands. They're investigative on an outer plane. This is, after all, the sign associated with journalism. They like gathering data and bringing it all together. Gemini rising needs to learn stuff in order to feel that life is worthwhile or meaningful. This is exactly why they're famous for seeking novelty, new people, new media, new events, new ideas. Gemini rising can give off a feeling that they actually have antenna tuning into this signal and then that one. They're always looking at the activity in front of them. This is, in fact, the reason Gemini gets the reputation of being a shallow sign, too much looking without rather than looking within. And it's true that Gemini rising doesn't do very well in situations where contemplation and solitude are the goals. They're too curious, extroverted, and adaptable. This sign isn't swayed by emotional undercurrents. They're fast workers, fast talkers, fast thinkers. And they're quick to drop something once it isn't novel anymore. This rising sign is so interesting to watch because of how very comfortable it is in meeting new people, at taking a seat and immediately becoming part of the conversation. You see, when Gemini is rising, you don't have one person reaching out to the world, you have two. This sign is represented by twins that are forever seeking each other. In Gemini rising, you find someone who's searching. Maybe they'll find their other half in you, or maybe in the person sitting next to you. Regardless, they keep looking. As long as they live, they look. And because of this, it is rare to find a Gemini on the rise that digs deeply into one specific area of life. They're the jack of all trades, and they don't like commitment or containment any more than a bird likes a cage. But therein lays the danger of this ascendant, flying off when responsible behavior is called for. If the Gemini rising in front of you has had some hard knocks, if they were neglected or regularly criticized as a child, if they were left out in the cold or told they shouldn't want an education, you can find a person that desperately wants to be part of the group but is afraid of rejection. And if you see a Gemini rising who can't envision a variety of ways to handle a situation, then you're looking at one who's damaged. How does a Libra ascendant present itself? With charm, of course. There's always something pleasant about them, something attractive, even if they aren't particularly attractive. They like showing that to the world because beauty and social grace have no downside. Even the people who hate them can't help but like them. And in order to have a meaningful life, Libra on the rise must have a balanced approach. This rising sign looks at life as a series of decisions, Deliberation and carefully weighed action are in continuous demand for them. The scales are always weighing this against that. So Libra rising weighs all the factors in their surroundings. Do they want to go to the party? Well, Aries and Sag would say yes and think later, but Libra begins a deliberation. Well, I could probably get a ride there because I could cash in that favor. But if there's going to be drinking, I'm not quite as interested because 3 hours in, everyone starts getting sloppy. I'd love to drink too, but I'm on a diet, so I can fit into those white shorts by the spring. So I probably would have to leave relatively early anyway. In fact, is it really worth calling in that favor? It would be nice to see the host again. I never did finish looking at her art collection, but I've got to teach a class so early the next morning, I don't know. Oh, that cute guy's gonna be there? So will I. This isn't a sporadic endeavor. Libra rising does this all the time, and it is what gets Libra rising the reputation of being indecisive and vacillating. The method by which they make decisions can take forever, and sometimes it's true. Overanalysis creates paralysis. That's when they need a push from a friend who comes in with a final consideration that tips the scales. However, the meandering road to a decision is worth the trouble because once Libra rising does decide, it may as well be etched in stone. This ascendant loves harmony and is sensitive to the social energies in the room. However, they usually aren't interested in the ugliness and rage and grief and sadness that has to be exposed and dug through to get to that harmony. No one said Libra rising was realistic. In fact, the downside of this ascendant is peace at any cost. Another pitfall of this riser is vanity. They are fond of beauty and symmetry, so they like to think they have both of those things. And a lot of them seem to think there's nothing at all destructive about that. It's all self-rated and very self-involved, so I let them have it. Libra rising is at its best when it strikes that delicate balance between head and heart, peace and principle. Aquarius on the rise sees all humanity. It's deeply tuned into the collective, the group, humankind at large. If something happens, Aquarius immediately thinks of how that event will affect the whole social web. Taking in a new piece of art, they're more likely than any other zodiac sign to view it as part of a whole generation of artists. The extent to which Aquarius does this really sets them apart. But isn't it funny that a sign so oriented toward everyone is also known as the most inventive, innovative, individualistic, and even eccentric sign of the zodiac? What's going on here? I think we find the answer in the dynamics at play with conjoined twins, or what was once referred to as Siamese twins. Twins that are not conjoined often relish the fact that they share the same exact DNA, and they promote their similarities. However, when you look at conjoined twins that survive into adulthood and can't be separated, the opposite occurs. The two are usually determined to be individuals. They have exactly the same birth time and place, so they have exactly the same birth chart. But as they grow older, they begin dividing it up. One will express the earth and water planets. The other will take the fire and air planets. One will express the strengths of the sun sign, and one will express the insecurities, and vice versa for the shared moon. They do whatever they have to do in order to stand out as individual beings. And we can all imagine how important that would be. Something similar goes on in the sign of Aquarius. It's precisely because they're so focused on the masses that they find it essential to be an individual. When you take the whole human race into account, when you continually measure the common sentiment or the spirit of the times, how you fit into it all as a unique person is an essential question to answer. In my view, this is the origin of Aquarius's need to be themselves. But why, when they are themselves, do they tend to be so forward-thinking, so rebellious, such a free spirit? Because two very different planets rule this sign, and one of them is Saturn. This planet oversees tradition and concrete personal concerns. So when Aquarius looks at the world, they can't help but see all the ways in which people cling to conservatism or old-fashioned ideas. For Aquarius on the rise, the old way of doing things stands out in the environment, and they care about where they fit on that continuum. If you're mindful of innovation and you value invention, it's pretty easy to throw aside traditions that block the way. It sounds like Aquarius rising has a lot of thinking to do, and it's true, they do. One way they cope with so much mental processing is by detaching. Every Aquarius rising goes through the world looking at things rationally and logically. Even if it's a messy interpersonal engagement, this rising sign also has a way of recognizing group dynamics and can often solve problems with lightning speed intuition. They like to pick up humanitarian causes too, and they're usually extremely idealistic. The negative side of this ascending sign is total removal of any emotion from all parts of life, even when it's called for, or having eccentricities so severe that people are made genuinely uncomfortable by them. The Aquarius ascendant can come across as someone who knows what it feels like to be an outcast, or just has a certain sensitivity for those people who live in isolation. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Air Rising. I'm Joy. More videos to come.